All right. Why you can't save your marriage by talking about it. All right. Excited to dive into this. It's a common theme that when men get the slap from their wife, they want to talk about it, they want to hash it out, and it never works well. It never ends up well for the husband. So today we're going to talk about why that happens. And we're going to touch on 5 different areas coming from the feminine's perspective so that you actually understand from the feminine side why it doesn't work for your wife when you're constantly wanting to talk about, saving the marriage, rebuilding the marriage, what the marriage problems are, and so forth. And we're super excited because we got new cameras, our lighting is better. So hopefully you'll be able to see our faces and just see us better overall. John, anything you want to say in kicking off this week's session?
I know, as I said, looking forward to it. I'm sure it will generate some other challenges and will improve and we'll make the changes necessary for next week. So here we go. Let's get it done.
Let's get it going. Okay, awesome. All right. I might have caught something from my daughter, so I might be sniffing a little bit. All right, let's get into this. So the first one, she's checked out. Okay. This is really important for you to understand because, when she's been giving you signals, and we talked about this in our last week's video, so make sure you check that out if you're not familiar with this. When she's giving you signals for 2+ years, there's a buildup to that, right? And what happens during the buildup is she gets more and more suffocated. So by the time she gives you the slap, she's totally checked out, which means she doesn't want to talk about the relationship. She's checked out. She's overwhelmed. She doesn't want to have anything to do with you, really, or the relationship that the two of you have created. She doesn't want to talk about it, think about it, even though she is, because she's hurt, but it's not something that's on top of her mind. And so when you're trying to force her to talk about the relationship in hope of fixing it or getting clear what you did wrong or why things are the way they are, it never goes well because she doesn't have the bandwidth, the capacity to be able to entertain a conversation around the relationship. And that can be frustrating. So what ends up happening is that she pushes you away, she shuts off even more, and things actually get worse in your relationship as a result of you trying to talk about it. Make sense? John, any questions or any comments?
Less questions, but I try to relate a lot of this stuff back to like real life examples for men so that they can relate to it. And like what comes up for me is, let's say you're in a job, right? And there's some aspects of the job that you're just not happy about. And like whether it's your colleagues or whether it's your boss, and over a period of time, let's say like 2 years, there's an accumulation of, I've gone and I've spoken to my boss about stuff and the changes aren't happening, or the changes happen for a while, but then it goes back to the norm. So there's an accumulation of emotion that gets you to the place where it's like, okay, you know what? I'm going to change jobs. Like I'm going to move companies. And at that point, when you get to that decision, you are checked out. Like hey, I'm out the door already. So even if they did offer you more money, or even if they did, promise you that things were going to be different, because you're already at the stage of, hey, I'm just done. Like I'm done talking about this for the past couple of years. I'm done with the empty promises or the temporary promises that have been made and broken over the past couple of years. So yeah, I've made the decision that I want a significant change in my life. And I'm relating that back to try to get into the headspace of where your wife is at, right? That she's gone through that same process, gone through the changes periodically that you've made, or the empty promises that you've made. And now she's at the point where it's like, I'm just done. Like, I need a significant change in my life for me.
Yeah.
right? And as I said, I just wanted to use that as an example so that some men can actually relate to, okay, now I get it. Like now I can see where she's at, because I've seen it in other areas of my life. So that's all.
Yeah. Yeah. Very well said. And then this kind of leads us to the second one, which is she doesn't trust you, right? So she doesn't trust you to want to talk about the relationship because your word is unreliable, your actions have been unreliable. And so in her mind, if I now engage you and talk about the relationship, it's not going to move the needle. Nothing will change. She doesn't trust you that by investing the time and effort of speaking about the relationship, anything will alter. It's just going to get back into the same cycle where you potentially make, I don't know, open promises, that you're going to change, that you're going to do X, Y, Z. She'll invest time and effort to talk about what's not working, why she's pissed at you, why she's mad at you, why she doesn't want to be with you, why she's not having whatever the topic is, right? And then in reaction, typically men would get into this mode of, okay, well, let's talk about what I can do better. And then you make promises there. You bring stuff to the table, and then it falters, right? It doesn't happen. And so this consecutive cycles of kind of betrayal in her mind or disappointment, at some point she'll be like, you know what, I don't trust you. I don't trust you to have conversations about the relationship. I don't trust you that whatever I give you about the relationship will actually have any meaning, or that you'll hear it, or that you'll act on it and anything will change. And so why should she, right? I mean, put yourself in her spot. If you had the same experience of your wife constantly telling you stuff and it would never hold, and you have all this frustration, hurt, pent up, built up, would you then want to spend the time to talk about the relationship? No, not really. I suspect you would not. It would be very discouraging, and you'd probably be sitting there just like she is, empty and not really present. Because when you know that you're speaking to somebody who's not really there, not really present, not really listening, not really taking it in, well, guess what? What's going to happen there is they'll be sitting there checked out. You're listening, but you're not hearing. And same thing would happen with you, right? If you were in her spot. And so understanding this from her side is really important, because one, you can start to have a little bit of empathy of why she's doing what she's doing, and a little bit of understanding of the feminine side. Okay, well, this is what she's experiencing, so no wonder when I sit down with her, there's not much that's happening. There's not much that's gonna take hold. Okay, and so again, because she doesn't trust you, if you keep forcing to talk about the relationship, because there's lack of trust, it's going to further push her away constantly, and it will make things worse for the relationship. Okay.
Yeah, there's that trust component. Like she's gone through periods where she has trusted you. She's trusted you time and time again, and in her world, you've betrayed that trust. Whether it's, again, going back to empty promises, or, hey, I'll make the changes. Yeah, every Friday night will be date night, and you do it for the following 4 weeks. And then after that, well, I can't do it this Friday night. And then it becomes every 2 weeks, and then it becomes once a month, and then it becomes once every 6 months. Like, she's moved from trusting you to being tired of being failed, not failed, but being hurt as a result of you, I'll say, betraying that trust, but damaging that level of trust that she's giving you. So then she does get to the point where it's like, I'm tired of trusting him, right? I'm tired of the temporary changes. But we're gonna get into that next. But yeah, it's an accumulation of all the past failures on your part. And again, we've spoken about it in other videos. It's not about, hey, you're to blame for where the relationship is at. What we instill in all of our members in the tribe is, hey, there's no power available to you if you're trying to play a blame game. If you're trying to list out the 20 things that she's done or she's at fault for the relationship, it doesn't empower you to actually make any changes in your life. What empowers you and is the only access point to making changes is, okay, what can I be responsible for? And the one aspect that you can be 100% responsible for is everything in relation to you. And that is actually a gift when men step into it. When you can take ownership and responsibility for you, it's a game changer, an absolute game changer. Okay.
Yeah, in the membership, we even talk about this concept called the trust account, which is really, it operates very similar to a bank account. But instead of money being deposited or withdrawn, we're talking about trust, right? And, when you get the slap, obviously your trust account is in negative. Never mind, there's no balance in there. You're in overdraft. And so you trying to force the conversation around relationship with negative balance in your trust account, it's not going to go well, right? You have to, there's specific things, tools to implement, and a game to play to bring back the trust balance in a positive. And essentially, you want millions of trust in the trust account, just like you'd want $1 million in your bank account, right? Because cool thing about it is when you're able to do that, you can withdraw, right? The more trust, the more money you have in your bank, the more you can withdraw. The more trust you have in your trust account, the more trust you can withdraw. So every time you make a request of her, ask her to do something, that withdraws from the trust account. Every time you say you're going to do something, but you don't, that withdraws from the trust account, right? Anytime you break unspoken promises, which are things that you've demonstrated through your actions, you promise through your actions, you withdraw from the trust account, right? When they're not done. So very, very powerful concept in the way to look at trust with your wife. And again, just further reinforces why you shouldn't be talking about the relationship, which is, by the way, number one rule. Like when you get the slap, nobody, no husband who has rebuilt their marriage successfully has ever rebuilt it by talking about the marriage. I can guarantee you that. In fact, to rebuild trust with your wife, it's everything but the relationship topic. You do not want to bring it up. If she brings it up, that's a different conversation, but you do not want to bring it up. Okay, let's look at the third one, okay? She cares about actions more than words, which makes sense, right? And it builds on kind of the previous two, the fact that she's checked out and the fact that she doesn't trust you. Of course, she's going to care about actions more because your words haven't been backed by actions, so there's no value associated with your word. And it kind of goes to respect as well. We've talked about last week around respect being, around your terms. Actually, it was 2 weeks ago. It's on the YouTube channel if you want to check it out, how to gain her respect. So one of the most powerful ways to gain her respect back is to be clear on your terms and not compromise them. However, another thing that impacts how she respects you is your word. And it's not only just with the feminine, it's also with the masculine. As men, my respect towards you will be on the strength of your word and how well you can keep that, right? So your wife also has a degree of respect associated with how well you keep your word. And because you haven't kept your word, and listen, how do I know this? Well, because you're watching the channel, you're watching this video, which means that you're probably experiencing some marital challenges. If you're keeping your words in all areas of your relationship, you probably wouldn't be experiencing that, right? So the fact that you're here watching this tells me that there's some issue there. And it makes sense. So now when you're attempting to sit down and talk about the relationship, which are use of words, there's no power behind it. There's no value behind your words. So to counter that, you want to talk less and act more. And actions will be way more valuable and actually move the needle for you, your wife, and the relationship. Okay? The relationship, I'm saying this because it's a separate entity. We'll at some point do another video on that, right? How the relationship is not really you and your wife. It's you, your wife, and the relationship. It's kind of like a triangle, kind of like a business, right? Business is, incorporation is its own entity. But we'll talk more about that in another video. I don't want to dissect too much.
We're talking at the fundamental level of moving away from talking more about the changes that you're going to make and actually making those changes. And the level after that is building the consistency. We've touched on it already as regards her hurt from previous broken promises. As I said, been times where you've had the date nights every Friday night, and then you moved away from it, right? So the actions weren't consistent. And again, it's training that muscle. Like men that find the bulletproof husband, they do start to train muscles that they've never used before. Be like going to the gym for the first time, right? And it's about recognizing that's the starting point for a lot of men in different areas of the program. Challenge men differently, but it's about realizing, okay, I gotta train these muscles, and if I stop training them, well then yeah, I'm gonna go backwards. If you miss out on going to the gym for a week, you don't start off at the same place the following week. Like you lose some of that momentum. So it is about building the consistent action on top of moving away from just talking about something and actually taking the initial actions.
And even that takes time, right? Like,
yeah,
so many men are looking for magic bullets where it's like, I'm going to flip the switch. I've been acting this way. I've trained my wife to do XYZ for the last, 5, 10, 15, 20, 35 years, however long. I think one of our members has been married 40 plus years, and he rebuilt his marriage from there, 35 or 40, or between 35 and 40. So that's why I'm going all the way out, because it's possible there as well, right? And stuff can happen throughout the marriage. It's a lifelong game. But so many husbands, they just want to flip the switch and be like, okay, I've been doing all these things for years, for decades, and I want one thing that will turn it around in days or weeks. And it's like, it's not possible. Okay. Now, can you short-term do it? Yes. Like there are all these, programs out there, rebuild your marriage in 8 weeks and 12 weeks. Is it possible to have a huge impact on your marriage in that time frame? Yeah, absolutely. We do it all the time. But to declare that your marriage is rebuilt in a matter of 8 to 12 weeks when it's just not enough time to have demonstrated through your actions consistently the changes. So if it took decades to get here, or many, many years, it's going to require you to demonstrate consistently by doing the things that are proven to work ongoing, right? And that's what rebuilds trust. Actions will rebuild trust when done correctly. So words are like, it's kind of like putting give me somebody who's small and somebody who's big, and they're about to fight. Goliath and who?
Go Kevin Hart and The Rock.
Yeah, Kevin Hart and The Rock. There you go, right? You put them in a cage, go fight. Who's gonna come out, right? Same thing here with words and actions. You put words and actions in a cage, actions will always demolish words. And I'm talking first round, 2-second knockout, always, because the weight is so much more. It means so much more, and the impact on the other person when you take action is way bigger. Now, this goes the negative side too, right? I can say negative things to my wife, but if I take negative actions towards my wife, that's going to negatively impact her way more than if I say negative words. But it works the other way as back also, right? My nice words to my wife, my promises, are not as valuable as the actions around them. Okay. Number four, okay, why you shouldn't talk about the relationship with your wife. She's hurt and feels betrayed. The hurt part of this is really important, right? So, um, under the bulletproof man umbrella, we're bulletproof husband, one angle of a man's life, right? And we're putting so much emphasis on the word bulletproof and bullet because of the insecurity that it represents, right? Bullets are insecurities. In other words, they're suppressed hurt. Now, guess what? It's not just men who have suppressed hurt. Women have it too. Women have bullets. They have insecurities. And so when she has years of pent up hurt, she's been trying to give you signals day in, day out. Hey, man, something's not working. Babe, something's got to change. And I get it. You're probably thinking like, well, why can't she just tell me directly what the problem is? Why do I have to figure this stuff out? This is a whole other video, again, on the topic of how the feminine works and communicates. She's acting out of her feminine. So she's not going to have a masculine relationship with you, or at least that doesn't really work well. It's very rare that your wife will directly tell you what she means because it's not how she operates. Okay? But that doesn't mean you shouldn't be able to understand and read her signs and signals. And so if it's been going on for 2+ years, where the constant disappointment, the constant betrayal, the constant hope that something will change doesn't take effect, each of those disappointments, betrayals, hurt her and start to withdraw from the trust account, and these hurts get suppressed more and more and more. So by the time she gives you the slap, not only she's suffocated, but her bucket of hurt is so full. That's when she snaps. That's when she, feels like she's biting your head off. She's poking you. She loses it. She screams. She yells. The amount of hurt is so pent up that it hurts her to talk about the relationship, because anything that comes out of your mouth about the relationship is a constant reminder of all the hurts that the relationship and you have cost her, at least her interpretation of it. Okay? So when you force her to want to talk about the relationship and it gets worse and worse, one of the aspects of that is all that pent up hurt. No wonder, right? Like, anything that's related to the relationship is immediately signaling. Let me share something that I think you can relate to. And it doesn't matter if you're watching this video and you're married or not married, as long as you've been in a relationship, long-term committed relationship, I think you can relate to this. Have you ever noticed that your partner, your wife, can always remember stuff that you've always forgotten? And I mean to the detail. Whether you went on a vacation and 10 years ago and you did XYZ, or you were dating and whatever happened, she can bring it back what happened and tell you exactly. And half the time, you probably don't even remember that happened, or you've forgotten about it. The reason why she can do that is because the way the feminine mind works is that she relates events to feelings. So when a feeling occurs in the present that already happened for her, let's say she felt disappointed in a very specific way. Now, all of the events that made her feel that way also come back. All of them. And then she can tell you exactly what happened and exactly how she felt. Isn't that crazy? Like, I cannot do that. I don't know. I don't think you can either, John, but who knows?
No, but you remember that one time?
Yeah, exactly. So now when you're forcing her to talk about the relationship, which is fully hurt by just even thinking about it, well, guess what? All of the hurts, or all of the events, to be more correct, all of the events related to the relationship that cause the same feeling of hurt that she's feeling, well, are coming up. Right? So can you imagine that you've been, for 2+ years, she's been giving you signals, which is her equivalent of working on the relationship, by the way. Okay? Because a lot of the complaints are, well, my wife doesn't want to work on the relationship, but I do. Well, she's been working on it. So in her mind, I've been working on the relationship for so many years. I've been giving signals, and I've constantly accumulated all of these hurts because of the disappointments and betrayal. So can you imagine the overwhelm it causes her to talk about the relationship with you? It's unbearable. One of the things that comes to me is I was watching this video where they had this machine that simulates a woman's periods. Okay, and there was a police officer that they hooked this machine on, and it was gauged from like 1 to 10, 10 being the strongest and 1 being very low. And the police officer didn't know what to do at like 6 or 7. That's how painful it was. Oftentimes, we're told that if a man had to bear a child and give birth, we would probably die in giving birth. It's so painful. This is on the physical realm. I'm giving you these examples of childbirth and periods. Now imagine on the emotional side, if you were to equate that on the emotional side, right? First of all, we're not as emotionally equipped as women are. And there are things that men are that women are not, just because of our biology and how we've evolved over thousands of years. So can you imagine having accumulated all this hurt, and then all of a sudden it's crashing down on you because the person that you're pissed at is forcing you to talk about it, right? John, am I driving this home with like I'm getting into full animation.
You're driving us home so much. I feel like I should apologize to you for something. I've hurt your feelings.
We can talk about it.
Yeah. And that betrayal, right? It's the betrayal of, in addition to everything that Andre's been saying, it's that betrayal, like that loss of, hey, you're no longer taking care of me. Like, you're no longer my safe space, right? Like, she's trusted you. And I said some of the emotions that come up around the betrayal is she doesn't know what she can rely on you for anymore, because she's been hurt so much by everything in her world, and all of the emotions that have come up for at least the last 2 years, and in some cases even longer than that, right? So it's about understanding. No different what we were saying before. Men operate from, take the actions first, and the feelings will alter. For her, for your wife, and for women, they operate in emotions. It's like having 2 different operating systems on your computer. It's like, but it fundamentally is like they're just There's a lot of similarities with respect to how documents are generated, but there's fundamentally different operating systems. And if you think your operating system is the only operating system and everyone needs to align to that, the feminine will never step into that, and vice versa. So
I really like that analogy with the operating systems because it's so
yeah,
true.
it's about that understanding, and that's what that's what we help men with when they come to us. It's about laying out the map of the components of what's at play. And when you understand the components of what's at play, then you learn how to play the game. And the relationship, I'm not saying the relationship is a game. It's not like, hey, how can I get 2 goals and keep the other person scoreless? But it's like, okay, I need to understand the parameters of life. It's not just your relationship, by the way. It's of life, so that I can be successful. I can be successful as a father. I can be successful as a husband. I can be successful as a man in life up to achieving stuff. So, okay, she feels unsafe.
That's right. So the this she ooh, I want to make sure I really emphasize this. She feels unsafe is and really it aggregates all the other 4 points because this is what it all amounts to. By far, the most important thing for any woman in a relationship is safety and security. Okay? Physical, financial, emotional, spiritual, mental. But by far, out of all of those, and there's more on the list. I mentioned 5, there's more. But by far, out of all of them, the most important one is emotional safety and security. It's no reason that at TBH we have millionaires in the program and we have men who can barely make it from month to month. Right? Yet the common denominator is lack of emotional self-sufficiency. The man is lacking emotional self-sufficiency, which means the man cannot provide emotional safety and security for the wife. Okay? Well, because it's a very big myth out there in the world that, the biggest cause of marriage problems is finance. It's not. Does it have an impact on it? Sure. But I tell you, if you're emotionally self-sufficient and you're fulfilling your wife's emotional needs, that will be greatly mitigated. And feeling safe for a woman, it's what she's looking for, right? Like going to the car to grab your keys or phone that you forgot in the car, 100 yards away from the house at night. Doing that walk from your house to the car is a totally different experience for you than it is for your wife, right? Her safety and her alerts and her intuition and instincts around looking for safety is constantly there, constantly. Okay? And if she doesn't feel safe and she knows that your words have no value, she doesn't trust you, she has all this pent-up hurt, right? And she cares about action more than words, but all she sees is words, then all of that comes down to, I don't feel safe. And when I'm talking about the relationship with you, I am not going to feel safe. And talking about the relationship is going to further reinforce the fact that it's not safe for me in the relationship. It's not safe for me around you. And I want out. I want to get to safety. And I will do whatever I need to get to safety, including my kids, right? Safety, her safety and security, number one, as selfish as it sounds most times, then the kids, then you, right? So if she has the opportunity after being suffocated for so long to run out and get away, it's there, right? And a lot of that on the men's side has to do with control. As men, we like control. Why do we like control? Because we like certainty. The feminine like certainty from us, but they don't live in certainty. And the fact that they don't live in certainty is difficult for a man to digest, because they're looking for certainty from her, because we love certainty. And if that certainty is not there, what do? We try to get certainty. How do we do that? By controlling, whether it's finances, whether it's emotional manipulation, whether it's physical, right? We're trying to control. And in the process of controlling, your wife will lose her identity. She will not see the light at the end of the tunnel. And when those things happen, plus the suffocation, she'll give you the slap. She won't feel unsafe. So they want to get to a place where they're not being controlled, okay? Where they know who they are and they can be themselves, where they get their identity back. Why? Because those two things will lead to safety, okay? And when you force your wife to talk about the relationship, it is a constant reminder how unsafe it is. So this is reason number 5 why you should not talk about the relationship when you're trying to rebuild it. But I know John has some gold nuggets that he wants to share with you.
No, it was specifically around that point, like tying it all back to, you touched on men seeking, clarity, because in some ways that's their safe space, right? Okay, if I can, that sense of control, that sense of clarity, they just got the slap. With this, as a result of getting the slap, a lot of things are uncertain. There's a lot of things that are not clear for them. So they're desperately trying to get back to a place where, okay, I need clarity. I need to know what this woman wants me to do, so that I can get to a place where I feel safe, that I feel grounded. And it's the recipe for disaster when you start to look at where she's at emotionally. She doesn't want to be backed into a corner. She doesn't want to give you, and sometimes she may not even know. She may not even know, hey, what are the 5 things that the Jimmy needs to do in order to get to stabilizing the relationship? Right? She may not be able to give you that. And if you keep pushing to try and get that from her, you actually just end up pushing her further and further away. What you can do is take 100% responsibility for you, take ownership, and start looking at, hey, how did I even get here? You didn't get there overnight, right? You didn't just, run a red light one time and disaster was on the other side. Like, this is an accumulation of stuff. And it will be an accumulation going forward if you don't change some fundamental things. That's why some of the quick fix stuff, it may work. Very few of them do work. And I always laugh at that text your ex back app that one man spoke about when I was chatting to him prior to joining TBH. And I just laugh at it. I just laughed at, but it goes back to, hey, I need to get to a place of certainty. I need to get control back. And yes, as I said, it may have worked in the short term. But what happens the next time she splashes? What happens the next time she's emotional? Well, now you need to download Text the X Back 2, because that's an upgraded app. That's the paid version. The paid version. But that's it. It's I've said it already on this. Like, there's the access to clarity and control is actually by working on you.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, so true. Yeah. This kind of sums up probably the 5. I mean, there's many other stuff that we can consider why not to talk about the relationship, or why not to talk about the marriage issues with your wife in terms of trying to rebuild the marriage after you got the slap. But I think these are the five main heavy hitters, right? So if you really if you really understand this and take it in, and you're actually open to that, then it will save you a lot of headache, and it'll increase the probability of not necessarily rebuilding your marriage, but not doing more damage. Because there's actions you need to take to rebuild your marriage. You cannot, it's not like you just, oh, I'm not going to talk about the relationship and it'll get rebuilt. That's not how that works. But you'll stop doing damage to the marriage, which sets the foundation so that you can start building on top of it. Okay. Now, this is super well explained in our free book that you can get. And I do want to apologize for last week and even the week before. We're using this streaming software, and I totally didn't realize that the comments go away after the live ends. So what we're going to do is John will take care of this part. So we have a book that we'll ship out to you for free. You just have to pay for shipping. There's a $9.99 cost for shipping. Okay. But otherwise, the book retails for almost $30 on Amazon. And it's a 330-page book. It encompasses a lot of all the stuff we've talked about. In fact, pretty much most of the program. And you can get that book. What you need to do is just put book in the comments. And then what John will do is he'll reply with a link, which when you click, you can put in your details. And we'll ship the book out to you. So that's... if you want that book, awesome. It's 4.5 stars on Amazon, or 4 point something, above 4.5. So very good reviews, and it has changed a lot of lives. In fact, a lot of men have joined our membership just because of the value they got from the book. Okay, so if you want the book, put book in the comments, and John will send you the link. Now, I want to get into another topic that comes up also very often, and in some way it relates to the overall topic that we just talked about. The only way counseling can help marriages. Okay, and I want to talk about this because first of all, there's a lot of coaching companies, marriage coaching companies, that say counseling damages marriages, counseling doesn't work. And it's true for, I'd say, most of the structures in how counseling is set up. Okay? Now, there is one way that counseling can work. And it's couples counseling, but with a caveat. And this has to do with you understanding that or at least accepting and acknowledging that the feminine and masculine operate differently. The way couples counseling can work is if you and her are treated separately. If the actual space created at couples counseling is for her, not for you. Okay? So if the husband gets what he needs from healthy masculine relationships, whether it's another program that he's in that talks about that, or he has men in his life that can support him and they don't get, they don't judge him. So if there are healthy masculine relationships that the husband gets, and he gets the tools from those healthy masculine relationships, and then the husband takes that to couples counseling and implements those by understanding that, okay, I'm in couples counseling, but this session is dedicated for my wife to create a safe space. And it links back to the video or to the section that we just did, right? Why you can't save your marriage by talking about it. We just covered 5 topics. So listen carefully how it relates, right? Because if your wife doesn't feel safe, if she's checked out, she doesn't trust you, she doesn't want to talk about the relationship, and she doesn't feel safe to talk about the relationship, when there's a third party, like a marriage counselor or therapist, okay, that will create safety. Even though you're there, your wife can feel safe to bring up issues because there's a third party that's holding the space. So if you bring the tools that you're getting from your masculine healthy relationships and you utilize them, 90-10, Huav, open-ended questions, a bunch of stuff. The tools can go on, right? That we teach men. You bring those tools into marriage counseling or therapy, where you make that about your wife. It works fantastic. That is the only structure that I've seen work for counseling sessions. Because in other situations, well, there may, I don't want this to be like a negative section around counseling, but I gave you a positive side of counseling. So I want you to also understand the other side, right? Most counselors and therapists have a difficult time treating the masculine and feminine different. So when the feminine and masculine are in the same space and they're trying to use the same tools for both, it's going to flop. It's not going to work. It just simply doesn't work. The masculine and the feminine need different tools. Okay? And when the masculine is responsible for his tools and implements them while understanding how the feminine works and operates, even when she's in a bitch session, doesn't matter. It works. And the therapist or the counselor can hold the safe space. Sorry, I'm very animated. I like to use my hands. I know I'm not Italian, but I get into it.
Would you like pizza and pasta?
Yeah, I know it drives John a little bit crazy, especially when I'm ticking my legs. When my legs go up and down, I get too excited. Anyways, so this is really critical for you to understand, because if you are doing couples therapy, couples counseling, there is a way to make it work, but it's by you getting the tools from outside of that and then making the session all about your wife, creating the space for your wife to feel safe, to express herself, and then leveraging the tools that you learned outside to maximize that. John, anything you want to add?
Yeah, just to be mindful that the husband can't be the one that's driving marriage counseling sessions, right?
Very true. Yeah.
That has to come from her. That has to she has to be invested in that being part of the journey forward for both of you, rather than you trying to, just having heard this going, okay, now I got to get her into couples counseling. It's not going to work that way, because now we're going back to control and clarity. Now you're just using that as a tool to try and get back to clarity for yourself. And that's the wrong mindset, the wrong context to take into, and it goes against the fundamental principles of her managing the relationship. You trying to force marriage counseling on her is you forcing the management of the relationship. And that's not your job.
It's like talking about the relationship.
Yeah.
Right? It's no different.
Exactly. So again, know your responsibilities, stay in your lane, take ownership, work on you, and yes, understand the other components of the relationship that you need to be aware of, but you can't be the one driving certain aspects of them.
Yeah. And I'm hoping you're starting to see how it's relating to the other big topic that we talked about, why you can't talk about the marriage. Same thing. Yeah, you're trying to force your wife to go into relationship talk mode with a counselor. No wonder she doesn't want to do it. However, if your wife comes to you and says, hey, I've seen your changes, I want to go to counseling, I want to work on myself, or your wife is still in the game of, you haven't got the slap yet, like the big slap, I want to divorce you, I want to separate, I love you, I'm not in love with you, all of those, or I've cheated on you, or maybe she cheated, but she says, hey, I want to work on our marriage. If she comes to you, is what I'm trying to say. If she comes to you, then yeah, awesome, great, go ahead, get it set up. But if she doesn't want to do it, I wouldn't be forcing it. In fact, I wouldn't even bring it up. I would focus on yourself and the actions that you take, the tools that you learn, because that's what's going to make the big difference for your relationship. And that's what's going to mean something in her eyes. Okay. We have a free training, actually, that's kind of goes a little bit more deeper into the feminine masculine side, because it's important that you understand that. Okay. It's called 5 shifts. If you want this training, put shifts in the comments, and then John will share the link. Okay. All right. let's talk about this beauty here. How to avoid codependency in your marriage. And this is like, I don't know how many people would actually admit it, that they're codependent, but codependency is a big issue in pretty much all marriages. I will even say my marriage. I mean, I wouldn't say it's an issue, but I recognize and acknowledge that there's codependency, right? There's some codependency, especially when you have kids that you can't really get around, like picking up kids from daycare and stuff like that, right?
Yeah,
So,
just on that. Yeah, sorry.
yeah,
I would distinguish those as there's cooperation and there's codependency. The cooperation is stuff like, hey, does kids need to be collected from daycare, or one needs to go to camp and the other one needs to go to a doctor's appointment. So there's a cooperation that occurs within the relationship. But where it gets dangerous is when it becomes a codependency. And that's what we're gonna chat about.
yeah. One of the ways, because distinguishing is important. One of the ways I was going to distinguish as well is emotional codependency. So when I talk about how to avoid codependency in your marriage, what we're really talking about is how to avoid emotional codependency. And to understand this, like you gotta understand this concept first, right? Codependency is why you married your wife. Love, the love that you feel when you meet a woman and everything is hot and heavy, that love biologically goes away after about 2-3 years. Okay, it transforms into something greater, some bigger love. But that heat, you're heating, that goes away. So that kind of love doesn't stay persistent. However, the reason why you feel that is because you have insecurities and your wife has insecurities and you're feeling each other's voids. So if you feel insecure in an area, which causes you to need the approval, if that woman gives you the approval that you're looking for in the way you want it, it's going to be very attractive. Attractive beyond her looks and other personality traits. It's going to, fuse that attraction even more. And so now you have 4 or 5 of these insecurities, like most men, and she's doing a great job in filling the void. You get really attached. You get really codependent because somebody is creating externally a level of safety. See, filling the void for you means they're creating safety for you. You feel safe. If you have a stupid insecurity, you think you're stupid, and anytime somebody makes you feel stupid, you start to use your survival behaviors. Or if you feel weak or not lovable, or you feel like a burden, right? Whatever your insecurity is, I just mentioned a couple examples. But the threat goes away because this woman is now filling those voids for you. You're going to feel awesome, on top of the world. And it goes the other way too. Okay? So if your wife has insecurities that now you're filling the void on for her, creating very strong codependency. And most men get married. First of all, this filling the void blinds you. It's kind of like the horse. When the horse has blinders on, can look just forward. That's what this does. So all of the red flags that you would have looked at or noticed prior marrying someone, you don't do because you have blinders on, because she's doing an awesome job of filling these voids, and vice versa, the other way. You're filling her voids, she has blinders on. A few years go by, you get married, and boom, you're now in a codependent relationship. You have kids. You are now in a codependent relationship, raising kids, which again becomes your obligation. There's way bigger impact of any negative action or acting on your feelings that you would do with your kids around. And so understanding the fact that you get into, most likely you've gotten into this relationship already codependent. Like that's the foundation. You got to understand that to even deal with it, right? You got to understand why this is a problem. This is a codependent relationships are a problem. Emotionally codependent relationships are a problem because the wife has insecurities, the husband has insecurities, they get married or they get to know each other, they fulfill the void for that their insecurity has created, they fall in love, they get married, and then they deepen this. Now, anytime, like, how do I say this? Notice the breakdown of your relationship when things started to go sideways. What did your wife do? She started to take out the plugs and started to not fulfill the voids for the areas where you're insecure. And what did you do? You reacted to it. You lost your shit. You screamed. You yelled. You justified. You defended. You overreacted in whatever that overreaction was. And the more you did that, the more she pulled out the ability to fill the voids. And then you did the same thing. So now here are two codependent people, husband and wife, who have emotional insecurities that they haven't dealt with, right? And they were feeling it for each other. They no longer feel it. They're butting heads. Okay? Like this is so important for you to get why you are in the spot that you're in. John, anything I missed or you want to add?
Yeah, and it's not that that both parties need to be completely independent of each other for a marriage to work or to be not dependent on the other person, right? Yes, your wife will need you for safety and security, and she will need you for safety and security more than you should need her for safety and security. Like it's just a fundamental relationship dynamic. So you can't say, hey, is she still codependent? Yes, to a degree, because it falls into the dynamics of the relationship. The natural is that yes, you will protect her. That's the natural component of it. And again, the dependency and how you got to that place of dependency is again the knowledge and the awareness now. But the next step is how do you move away from it? Right? How do you break the cycle of being dependent? Right? The emotional self-sufficiency. Yeah. Go.
Yeah. Before we get deep into this, it is really critical for you to understand contextually where John and I are coming from. We are going to talk about emotional self-sufficiency for you as a husband, as a man. It doesn't mean your wife doesn't need to deal with her shit. It doesn't mean that. She has insecurities. She has the ability to become more and more emotionally self-sufficient. She has that ability, okay? But don't focus on that. Focus on your emotional self-sufficiency because that's going to lead her. When she sees that you're being responsible and you're owning your emotional self-sufficiency and you're altering stuff there, that's going to give her what's possible. That's going to motivate her and lead her. So the way out of an already codependent relationship, emotionally codependent relationship, is to get rid of your insecurities, to pull your bullets, right? Codependency in a relationship, emotional codependency in a relationship is based on two people being insecure and filling each other's voids and then being dependent on the other to continue make them feel safe. Because if the void is not filled, they will feel threatened. Okay? So if you get rid of your insecurities and you pull your bullets, which means you get rid of your suppressed hurts from your life, then you will be able to get rid of the threat. And if you're no longer threatened, then you no longer need somebody to externally fill the voids, which means You're no longer codependent or relying on your wife to make you feel safe, to make you feel whatever that looks like, right? Make you feel appreciated, make you feel respected, or any of that. You no longer need that, because what was fueling it all is now gone at a root fundamental level. That's how critical this is. Now, how a man deals, and this is a whole different topic, right? Okay, here's what I'll do. Pulling bullets is not an easy thing to do. Simple, but not easy. If you want to get a little bit more educated on that and how to do it, get some coaching, book a free coaching call, okay? Put call in the comments, and John will send you a link that allows you to watch a training and then book a call. So the booking the call happens at the end of the training, because the call goes way better when you actually have watched the full training, okay? So a 45-minute training. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because pulling bullets for women looks very different than it is for men. And you can be of service to your wife to pull her bullets in her own way, assuming that you've dealt with yours. If you haven't dealt with your bullets, which means you're not emotionally self-sufficient, then when your wife is attempting to pull her bullets, all it's going to do is trigger you. And you're going to snap, you're going to overreact and do something like justify, defend, over-explain, yell, interrupt, whatever it is that your defense mechanism is, right? But when you have dealt with your bullets, then you can create the safe space for her to start pulling her bullets. This will create the space and allow her to be emotionally self-sufficient. Really powerful stuff, okay? Now, I get it that, insecurities and the concept and how to do that, like this was, you weren't taught that, right? So book a call with us, one of our senior coaches, and they'll give you a taste of what that could be like, okay? Just put call in the comments or the chat. No, not the chat, the comments. All right. Anything you want to add around the codependency stuff, John, that I may have missed?
Yeah, it's just the degree to which a man is codependent will be reflected in how much he compromises his own terms. Right, and terms is a topic we've touched on in a previous video. But yeah, your terms being who are you? Like, who are you as a man? So, as I said, the more dependent you are on somebody else, the higher the probability is that you're going to compromise who you are as a man because of this drug that you need, that you're addicted to from this other person. So you're fundamentally moving away from who you are as a man, as a father, as a husband, because this other person has this substance that can temporarily fill a void for you. And in some cases, yeah, you'll do anything to get that substance. Right? You're just addicted to feeling that somebody else makes you feel for X amount of time. And as I said, in the most damaging component of that for men is, okay, you compromise who you are. You go against your own north, south, east, west of who you are and how you navigate through life, because you can't stand on your own 2 feet. Independent, that's funny. I say independent of the other person, but the more independent you can be and solid, consistent, and reliable you can be, the more you have available to actually offer to the other person. You are a higher valued individual to the other person, the more solid, consistent, and reliable you are. The more aligned and in tune and consistent with your terms, that's like gold that you're bringing to the relationship.
Yeah. And I guess I'm hoping everybody's starting to see that it's like there's all these different components, right? Terms, confidence, emotional self-sufficiency, and the list goes on. All of these are in their own silos, super critical, but they all intertwine. They all have an impact one on the other. Okay, either by reinforcing or improving or stabilizing, whatever that may look like.
Yeah, and we've only touched on the bulk of this conversation has been around emotional self-sufficiency. What about
Yeah.
all the other ones?
Yeah.
Financially, spiritually, physically,
Yeah.
and so on. All the same principles of what we're speaking about play out in those other arenas as well.
Yeah. One last thing to touch on is, I said emotion. I said safety and security is the most important for your wife. Out of that, emotional safety and security is by far the most important. I want to kind of re-emphasize that because it's basically the reason why cheating happens. Most affairs start with emotional affair. It's because there's no emotional safety and security, right? It's where control peeks its head out. And it's where all the nasty things that happen in marriage come from, including things like domestic violence, right? Wife beating husband, husband beating wife, or any of that stuff. So it's really important that you get that. You get that how important emotional safety and security and self-sufficiency is important for you, and why it's so important for her, and what's your job in it. Because fulfilling your wife's emotional needs, which is creating emotional safety and security, is your job. It is not your wife's job to fulfill yours, but it is your job to fulfill hers. And you can argue with this. I mean, you can argue with it, but it's just one of the differences between the feminine and the masculine. So either you can argue with it or accept it and actually leverage it for your benefit, where you can transform your relationship just with this one concept by understanding this difference between the feminine and masculine, right? If you can start to fulfill your wife's emotional needs, but not expect her to fulfill yours, huge dynamic shift. All right. Next up, this is one of the topics that, again, relates to our main topic of not talking to the relationship. Unspoken truths about trust. I left the D out there. The unspoken truth about trust, okay? And I'm going to say something very bold here. Trust doesn't operate the way you think it does, okay? So first aspect of that is that trust is not a feeling. So how do you evaluate trust typically as a husband? Well, my wife did X, Y, Z. I cannot trust her anymore. Or, my friend did this and I cannot trust him or her anymore. Or my kids did this and I cannot trust them anymore. But the whether you can trust them or not is based on feeling, how you feel. Somebody did X, and now it makes you feel this way. And because it makes you feel this way, I cannot trust them. And that's not a good way to go about trust. Why do I say that? You cannot love or trust anybody in the world. You cannot love or trust anybody, without eventually getting hurt. So you getting hurt because you're loving and trusting will happen. Doesn't matter if it's your wife, your kids, your dad, your mom, your siblings, your friends. It doesn't matter. If you trust and you love, you will get hurt. It's not an if, it's a when. So now that we're clear that hurt will come when you're loving and trusting, you can't really base trust on how you feel, because every time you get hurt, you're going to feel like shit. And you're going to feel like, oh, I don't want to trust this person because I trusted them and they hurt me. Okay? So I want to give you an alternative, which is that the problem is not that you got hurt and you cannot trust, because trust is a choice. You have the ability to choose to trust again. You have the ability to say, I'm going to choose and trust that person again, even though they did X, Y, Z. What's in the way is the hurt. See, every time you trust or love somebody and you get hurt, It's a new bullet. It's a new mini insecurity. And what's in the way of you choosing to trust that person again is you suppressing that hurt, is you suppressing that mini insecurity. Okay? If you learn, and this ties back to becoming emotionally self-sufficient, right? Because it's not just about dealing with your bullets and insecurities from childhood. It's also about what life's going to throw you from the present moving forward. Not just dealing with the past, but forward stuff as well. You're going to get bullets are going to be shot at you. Okay? You're going to have people, circumstances, create scenarios where new insecurities are going to pop up. New bullets are going to come at you, and you have to deal with those. So dealing with the old ones is one aspect, but dealing with new ones, you also have to do that. In fact, just as important. And so when somebody breaks your trust, it hurts you, and you suppress it, and you don't deal with it, and it stays there suppressed. And then the next time it happens, somebody else, the next time. And all of a sudden you're realizing, holy cow, I can't trust people. I'm constantly getting hurt every time I trust. Why? Why is this happening? Well, it's because you're not getting rid of the bullets that are caused because of the break of trust. So now you know trust will have you get hurt when you trust somebody. So getting hurt has you suppress it and makes you feel like you can't trust again. What John and I are proposing here is that you can actually logically make the conscious decision every time to trust your wife again or whoever, as long as you've dealt with the middle part, which is I trusted, I got hurt. I now got to deal with the hurt. I need to let out that hurt so I'm not carrying it moving forward. And then when you do that, your feelings will alter. Okay? It won't bother you that you got hurt. And then you can choose to trust. Now, listen, you also don't want to be silly, right? You make an investment with somebody multiple times and they constantly break your trust. Even when you go through this process, at the end, you may choose not to trust. So the choice around trust can be I choose to trust or I choose not to trust. It doesn't matter which one. You can choose either way, but it's not emotional based. It's not hurt based because you have dealt with the hurt. Okay? So the key to be able to constantly trust or choose not to trust is to deal with the hurt from previous betrayals of trust. And the exact same thing goes for love. When you love, you will get hurt. When you trust, you will get hurt. Getting hurt is not an if, it's a when. The real question is, what do you do with the hurt? You're up, buddy.
Yeah, and just to tie back into doing stuff as a result of terms, right? You do stuff as a result of terms. When you're doing stuff as a result of, hey, this is just who I am. There's no expectations in that. There's no expectations of something back if you do something as a result of terms, right? And as a result of not having those expectations, there's very few avenues to be able to get hurt. But like, hey, I take care of my kids. Why? Because that's who I am as a father. But if I take care of my kids with the expectation that they're going to behave a certain way as a result of it, then you open yourself up for hurt. So that's it in relation to terms. Now you come into your relationship with your wife, and you're doing stuff with an expectation of getting something in return, and that expectation is not met. And as a result of it not being met, you end up getting hurt. Right? So operating from a place of your terms looks different to operating from operating from your terms, and tying expectations to those situations and those interactions. And that's where a lot of the hurt comes from. It's the failed expectations. Hey, I bought chocolates and flowers. I was expecting sex tonight, like, and it didn't happen. But if you're buying chocolates and flowers because it's coming from a place of gratitude, or it's coming from, an appreciation for who she is, or celebrating something with no attachment to the result afterwards, instead you automatically reduce the avenues to get hurt. That's it.
Yeah, I really like your examples and context shifts. Yeah, huge. Yeah. Listen, because we're such nice people. How about this? We have a stages framework free training, okay, which basically walks you through the path of rebuilding your marriage. And this really encompasses a lot of the stuff that we've talked about, because when you watch this training, you're going to see little snippets of, okay, wow, they were talking about that, emotional self-sufficiency. I see how this fits in, right? Or the codependency. Or even if we look at the counseling stuff and how communication is impacted. So the stages framework walks you through exactly what are the stages that you're going to go through in rebuilding your marriage, and understanding each of those frames. And trust is such a huge component, because trust is an overarching principle in the stages framework, right? You've got to start rebuilding it. And each of the stages have different tools and aspects that have you rebuild it. So yeah, if you want this training, put stages in the comments, and what we'll do is we'll put in the link in the comment section. Okay. All right. Please make sure you watch this video. If you haven't, stop. You're trying to save your marriage the wrong way, okay? Because it has added pieces that complement the topics that we talked about today. And I'm assuming if you're watching this video, guess what? You need as much help as possible. So instead of you getting lost in the plethora of videos, I want to point you to this next one, because it fits really well with the topic that we talked about. Very complementary. Cool. John, anything for you before we wrap up? Yes, baby. All right. See you all next week.
Over and out.
Over and out. Take care.